I have a Robin Hood shirt today. I thought it was semi-applicable given the fact that, to a degree, Robin Hood is kind of like his own version of like Joy Boy in the fact that, he, he robs from the rich to give to the poor, in the fact that, the poor have had just, been so overtaxed in regards to, what we see in what's in the folk tale and what's in the Disney movie and so many other variations of Robin Hood being brought to life in some shape or form. I love the Disney animated one with all the animals. I always loved that one. That one was always so fun. Um, but Robin Hood, he steals from the rich to give to the poor, and then he does what he can to help uplift their spirits as much as possible. So I just kind of thought that was semi-applicable there. Going into the chapter, so we have chapter 1116, titled Conflict. Okay. So we start off with the cover page, and the cover page is the continuation of the Yamato story. And Yamato has now left the flower capital and has made her way. It looks like she's in Okabore town at this point in time. And she is picking up some medicines and dumplings from Otsuru, who is, of course, she's Kinemon's wife. She's the one that owned the little cafe restaurant thing, tea house, that, Luffy and Zoro took Tama to so she could get medicine in her and everything like that. So we see Suru there. We see that she does have, like, the scar from where she got hurt by, when she was attacked by Hold'em when they were burning the village to the ground. We already knew that she was alive. We saw her be reunited with Kinemon, and I still love the fact that, like, he hasn't seen her in, she has not seen him in 20 years, but she still obviously loves him, and he still adores her, and still thinks that she's just so beautiful, even with having the scar. That is good. Those are relationship goals there. For that, we also see in the background, we see Urashima, who is the sumo wrestler that Luffy fights. He's also the sumo wrestler that is hitting on Kiku when we're first introduced to him. And then he gets his top knot cut off by Kiku. And then he gets fought by Luffy and defeated in a sumo match. So we see him. He seems to be in better spirits. We have not seen him since he was defeated by Luffy. I don't believe we saw him before since then. But he seems to be in good spirits. Maybe, he seemed to be rather high on the pecking order to a degree, like, just in general. Like, he was better off than a lot of the other citizens because he was a sumo, he was an entertainer, he was pretty popular. Maybe he was, like, gaming the system and everything like that, too. Not that I can necessarily blame people for, like, gaming the system given the circumstances that they had when it came to Orochi, depending on, like, how much of the system they were gaming, as opposed to the guys that were like, we're going to build houses, burn them down, charge people, and then build them again, and all of that stuff. The people that, Hiyori kept scamming out of their money. But so we see him in the background. Yamato's getting headed off. He's got his backpack on, which probably has all the bentos in it that, we saw Hiyori and Otoko making in the last cover page. So we got that. Moving into the actual chapter, we cut to just one of the random kingdoms. I don't think this is any specific kingdom. It doesn't look like a specific kingdom, but it might just be Alabasta, just given the circumstances and the fact that we'll see Alabasta again later. But we have the citizens are now reacting to what Vegapunk said about the fact that this war has been lasting 800 years and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, did he just say that there were world-sinking weapons still out there somewhere? They're like, oh god. And we cut to the inside of Castle Pangaea, inside of the flower room, where we see Eam walking around, and we're still, like, hearing people, like, their explanations, and it's not like Eam can hear this, but it's like their explanations, or, exclamations of, like, how can an 800-year-old war be ongoing? No one from back then is even alive today. Which is true, minus possibly, a very small handful in regards to Eam and the Gorosei, depending on, how old each of them are. Because, like, even with the giants, like, they live to, like 350, give or take, and, like Dorian Bragi, like, I had this something pointed out, one of these was pointed out in a video I watched. It was like, Dorian Bragi's, probably not their parents, but maybe their grandparents had been alive during the Void Century, but, or great-grandparents, depending on stuff. There's not as many generational gaps in that regard from, like, one giant generation to the next, but we also don't know how old giants typically are when they start having kids, so there's that up for debate as well. And we see Eam walking around in the flower room, and they're making their way over to the wall where we see this semi-shadowed portrait that it looks like Vivi. It's probably Lily. There's the whole Eam seems obsessed with Vivi because she looks like Lily. Lily kind of, up and betrayed them when they were all making their, vows around the throne and everything like that. Refused to become a world noble. Left, all of that stuff. And, there were the theories that, like, Lily was Eam. I think was one of the theories that was out there at one point in time that I remember talking about. It's just like, no, I don't think that's true. So, we see a portrait of Lily, pretty much just confirming that, yeah, she's probably going to look exactly like Vivi, maybe probably even the same hair color or something like that. Of course, I use my stand-in of Lily right now of Jasmine from Disney, because that's the way my brain works. And we have the exclamation of, like, why would a war rage on in total secrecy? I got something to tell you about a Cold War that we've had here, and it kind of seems to be starting up again, and some other things. And yeah, there's lots of wars that get raged in secrecy that the world does not know about. So we're cutting around. We cut to Alabasta, possibly back to Alabasta. It didn't say where we were before, but we're very clearly in Alabasta now. And before I continue with what, with what Vegapunk is saying, first I'll go over what's going on in the background. So we cut to Alabasta, and we cut inside of the castle where we see the palace at Alabarna, where we see Igaram is looking over what are missing posters for Vivi. Because, of course, the world's government does not want her harmed in the process. They want her returned, so that way they can, use her, give her to Eam, whatever the case may be. And Igaram is crying. We finally see Karu. Karu is there with Igaram, and Karu is crying too because he can't find his best friend, which is fair. I would be angry about that as well. We cut into what is clearly supposed to be like Cobra's tomb, or where he is like lying in state. We see what would be his, his casket is there, covered in the hieroglyphs and everything like that are very depicted, very represented in, Alabasta, and the fact that it's based off of ancient Egypt. So there's lots of, don't say hippogriffs everywhere. That's not right. That's Harry Potter. There's lots of hieroglyphs all over the place. And in the tomb area, we see there's like a giant portrait of Cobra. And then around the portrait, we see on one side there is a jackal. And on the other side, what is the representation of the falcon. And then on either side on the floor, of the people who are like sitting in state and like watching over Cobra's tomb, we have Shaka on the side where there is the jackal. And we have Pell on the side where there is the falcon. So nice representation there. And Shaka and Pell are still like, they obviously want to go and find Vivi, but they can't really do that. They had to get their king home to be, laid to rest within his home. And I will point this out. We do know that there are the, that they have like the Tomb of the Kings or whatever it ends up, whatever they called it, that is connected to Alabarna, the palace at Alabarna, because that's where the poneglyph was. Now, 2 years ago, when Luffy had his big battle and everything like that with, crocodile, a bunch of that got destroyed. So there's the question of like, okay, how much of this did they rebuild? How much of this is just like, well, we're going to build this anyway, and then Cobra is sick, so we're going to work on getting his tomb ready, just to be on the safe side and have all of that set up. And, they may have done some rebuilding of those areas. We don't know exactly. But I will point out that in the top of where they have all of the hieroglyphs above Cobra's portrait, between the falcon and the jackal, we have what looks like a representation of the sun. And as I pointed out back when I did my video about like the history of Alabasta and talking about, Lily, and other people had pointed this out as well, that the flag of Alabasta is actually a sun, is a sun clearly on display. And, at the time when we first saw that in Alabasta, there wasn't much context there. Now, given the fact that we know that Lily rebelled against the world government and that she, seemed to somehow end up becoming an ally of Nika or something along those lines, and about the sun god Nika in general, suns become a little bit more prevalent in this regard. So the fact that, there is, this sun-looking hieroglyph here is quite interesting. And for the message that Vegapunk is saying, he says, "In all sincerity, I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart, as there is something else I must confess. My goal was always to create an energy source to fuel society's development. And while it remains unfinished, my research has culminated in the Mother Flame. Its power has many practical uses. I am certain that one day this undying energy can be harnessed to ensure that the entire world lives in abundance." So Vegapunk seems very happy about this. He is proud of the fact that he made the Mother Flame. He's just not happy about what it ended up being used for its first main thing. And he's still talking. He's like, this breakthrough is marred, however, as a small fragment of the flame was stolen. And he's like, and I take full responsibility for this unfortunate event. And as this is going on, we cut through the panels to where we see the Mother Flame inside of its giant container and everything. And it looks like Saturn had a lot of fun destroying a bunch of the different things around the Mother Flame containment unit, but we don't know. I mean, I would assume it's still in working order and everything like that, but that's still, a lot of damage was done to that system. And of course, they don't want to destroy that. So there's that. So this means that, he knows that York stole part of the Mother Flame, and we'll get to that a little bit later. And we cut back outside of the island where we see all of the ships that are the Navy ships that are watching what's going on. And they're like, "The Cypher agents are stuck in the middle of the island. This is bad. They're completely surrounded by flames." And we cut to where we see... So, this was pointed out at some point by one of the other YouTubers that I watch. I think it was Teching, that there's like, the giant bottle that was in the middle of the island that was releasing all of the island clouds. Island cloud pyrobrine mixture that was being used to hold up the Labosphere, and part of that has now just been destroyed. And we see all along the ground, we see a bunch of the different Cypher agents. We see S Snake sitting there still trapped in her balloon. I don't see any of the others. We see remnants of part of like the sphere, because there's still a bunch of damaged equipment around them that's like been cut in half. And it's going to be stated by Edison in a second that like they can't they can't expand the island cloud anymore. So we don't know how much that managed to expand or make more of the island cloud during the time frame before Venus Juro, sliced it apart. So we have Susie talking, and she's like, That was quite the tremor. Any idea what happened, Edison? What's happening, Edison? And he's like, that spooked me too. The whole basement came crashing down here with all of the Cipher Pol agents in tow. And he's like, and I can't generate any more clouds for the Straw Hat crew. And she's like, and Stussy is like, came crashing down? How is that possible? It's like, well, giant horseman with sword. And he's like, another monstrous elder must be heading up. Oh boy. And Stussy's like, oh god, that's not good. And Edison's just like, Stussy, get yourself out of there. And we see her like probably take a deep breath and compose herself for a moment. And she's like, Edison, is it okay if I let Kaku go free? And Kaku, still off to the side in his bubble, is just like, Now, bear in mind, he's been listening to this conversation where, like, Stussy's a clone, and he's learned that probably in this time frame, and he's learned that, she doesn't think she has a reason to go on living. So he's just kind of sitting there, and it's not like they can't hear each other, because he can hear what's going on outside of the bubble, and he can talk to her, because we saw them talking earlier, a couple of chapters ago. And Stussy's like, I don't want him to suffer the consequences of this. Don't worry, I won't let him go after the Straw Hats, and I don't think pursuing them will be his priority anyway. Like, Edison's thinking, and then he goes like, understood, Stussy. I'm sorry for putting you through all this. It didn't occur to me that they were your friends. Forgive me for making you turn on them. So, this is something that has been highlighted when it comes to Cipher Pol, particularly the groups that seem to work together a lot. We saw this in regards to Water 7 and Enies Lobby, and then like the CP9 Independent Report cover page series that we had, where all of those members that were part of CP9 that, they all survived the Buster Call because Blue and O managed to wake up and save all of them, and then they all worked together to get money to pay for Lucci's medicine and recovery and everything like that. And then they stuck together after that. They were going to stick together against going, not returning to the world government. And then they still returned to the world government, the Cipher Pol, and became Aegis Zero. And then, we saw that all of them became agents of, Cipher Pol Zero at that point in time. And from there, we saw, Stussy and Kaku and Lucci all interacting, and we saw them kind of joking a little bit on the ship on the way to Egghead Island and everything. And yeah, the Cipher Pol agents, or at the very least some of them, and we even saw this with the ones that were on Wano, on Onigashima, when everything was going on with the battle there with, like, Guernica and Joseph and Maha and such, that, like, they didn't want each other to die. They did care about each other, but they also have this ingrained in them that they are to follow the orders given to them by the Celestial Dragons or by the world government, by whomever it is that is giving them this order. That you follow the chain of command, that if you're given this order, this is what you do. And Stussy, we know that she had been, within Cipher Pol, working her way probably up through it for a long time. Whether or not they 100% knew that she was a clone, maybe just Vegapunk passed, maybe they didn't know that Vegapunk was part of her creation. Maybe she just passed herself off as, like, Stussy Buckingham Stussy's daughter or something like that. They might know that she's a clone, I don't know. That's never been stated, but it has been stated that she was undercover for a long time. And then she made her way up through the ranks of the Cipher Pol and all the way up to Aegis Zero and everything, and she was undercover. And she would have ended up spending time around a lot of the different agents, and she, was friends with Kaku and Lucci. Well, as much as friends with someone as Lucci can be. He seems to at least care about Kaku. He might care about the others. Probably has no sympathy for Stussy right now, but Kaku clearly does seem to have some sympathy for Stussy, because we look at his face after, like, what Edison said about, like, I'm sorry I made you betray your friends. And Kaku's just like, what? Friends? Is, like, the look on his face. I I was like, he's not interrupting their conversation, which I guess is nice, polite of him, but it's also like, can I have a say in this matter? I mean, yes, I would like to be let out of the bubble, but what is going on? Kaku, I don't know. I don't know what'll happen with Kaku. He might try to go and save Lucci. They are the closest thing that each other has to family, as in that regard. And Edison keeps saying, and he's like, despite being torn between both sides, you still rescued us. That conflict is proof of your humanity, Stussy. It's like him trying to explain, like, you have conflict inside of you. You didn't want to betray your friends, but you still wanted to help Vegapunk. And even though you chose Vegapunk, who you view as your creator, that doesn't mean that it was an easy decision. That shows that you have humanity, so I like that. And he's like, do as you please. Just find a way to keep on living. And Stussy's starting to cry, and she's like, yes, sir. We don't see her let Kaku out of the bubble. We'll see what happens there. He might. I don't know. We might see that in the next chapter. I don't know. I'm assuming, like, the bubble is pretty durable. But I would assume there would be something that could be done to the bubble to, like, release it. And Stussy probably knows what that is. We know there was the bubble gun to create it. We know the pacifistas, Mark IIIs, could create the bubbles, bubble shields and spheres and stuff like that. Blunt force, I don't think, is going to pop the bubble. Jabbing it, poking it with something might do it, but I don't know. I guess that might just... Either Oda will show us how to break the bubble, or it'll just be Kaku's out of the bubble, moving on. It's like, how did you get him out of the bubble? Let us know. Vegapunk continues. And he's like, 2 weeks after the flame fragment was stolen, we observed an intense glow emitting from above the kingdom of Leloucia. I later got the news that the entire nation had mysteriously vanished without a trace. While he's saying this, we are cutting to where the Revolutionary Army is in the Kamabaka Queendom, where we see a bunch of the different second-in-commands. We also see Moda, who is, of course, from the Leloucia Kingdom. And, so she's like, what? My home? What happened? Now, she was on the ship when they were leaving Leloucia with Sabo, along with other ones that wanted to, like, join the Revolutionary Army. They all left with Sabo. But there were still others, of course, that were still trapped on Leloucia, and it got destroyed. So they're all dead, probably. So we have that. Vegapunk continues. Before long, my equipment registered the worldwide earthquakes I mentioned earlier. This might be my pride as a scientist talking, but I was certain of one fact. Only the Mother Flame could supply the immense energy needed to cause this tragedy. And then we cut to two people who do have we see Moda again, and she's just crying because now she has the full confirmation that her home is gone. And as to what happened to it. And she's like, but why would someone do that to Leloucia is what she's all worried about. But we cut to someone else. We cut to Vice Admiral Camille, who is the Vice Admiral, I believe it's of G2, which we saw in Ace's cover page series when he was on the hunt for Blackbeard after Alabasta and everything. And he ended up dealing with Vice Admiral Camille by, like, delivering a note from Moda saying, hey, you want milk for your coffee? And, because her parents worked at the Marine base as, like, chefs and as cooks and everything like that. And then, they went and they got milk from Moda and she could see her parents again. And then they have milk and better coffee at the Marine base. So there's that. But Camille's like, an ancient weapon did that? Now, the question here is, considering how close G2 seemed to be to Leloucia, how much did they know that it was, like, did they know that it was gone? Or did they at least witness what happened to a degree, and then they realized that it was gone, and then, like, I don't know. Like, did they think that it was, like, pirates did something? That it was just some type of natural disaster that happened? I don't know. But there's that. And of course, this is Vegapunk is like his pride. He is like, yeah, the only thing that seemed that I could think of that could be even remotely used to generate that amount of power needed to produce the weapon for Uranos would be the Mother Flame. And then we cut to the Protence Kingdom, where the king is King Elizabello II, who we saw and met quite a bit and got to know back during Dressrosa. I have not gotten to him in my Royals and Rulers videos yet, but he will be coming up shortly, as in after I do the German Kingdom. I'm going to do a bunch of the miscellaneous kingdoms. But we see King Elizabeth II, and we see Dagama, who is like his royal advisor that was also like part of like the tournament to try to win the Devil Fruit. Elizabello is a warrior king, and he has like his like king punch that he uses. That like it causes a lot of damage when he activates it. It just takes him a long time to get it warmed up before he can use it. So we see Elizabello and we see Dagama. And Elizabello is like, Lelucia is gone. Hurry and confirm it. And they're like, this is the first word hearing about this. And Dagama is like, yes, sir. So it has been confirmed that Lelucia is within the new world, I believe. I don't remember, because it's like, from what we saw in the Aces cover page series, it looked like it was in the Paradise side of the Grand Line, but then it seemed like maybe it was in the New World, and then like other things happened, but like I thought that they were all within, that section was within, the Paradise side. So that's a little bit left up for debate. Based on other information that we have been given. But, so, I don't know, maybe Lelucia is near the Protence Kingdom. I thought we got confirmation that, like, the Protence Kingdom, actually, I don't remember where the Protence Kingdom was, but it would make sense that, like, Elizabello does seem to care about other kingdoms. He was, happy when he got to see, King Riku again and everything else with everything that happened in Dressrosa. Vegapunk continues, and he's just like, my very own invention was used to power an ancient weapon. The motives and origin of the proprietor, whatever it is, are a mystery to me. But in the end, it all boils down to one hard truth. I am an accessory to this act of mass murder. I cannot express how remorseful I am for my part in this. I am truly sorry. And we see him doing, he gets down on his hands and knees and bows and everything. Bows all the way head to the floor. And, I mean, this is kind of one of those things that, this was brought up, last year when everything was going on, when, Oppenheimer was coming out of, like, how much blood do the scientists that developed, the atom bomb and everything like that, how much blood is on their hands, how much blood is on the hands of who, ordered this to be created, who ordered it to be dropped, everything like that. So it's just like how much blood is on everybody's hands in that regard. And, some scientists are like, there's one example back from World War II that was, I believe he was a German scientist, and he had been working on trying to develop rockets to try to get to the moon or launch into space. And, certain army came in and were like, you work for us now, and you're going to use these rockets to design, missiles. And the scientist said later on, it was like, the rocket worked fine. It's just what it was holding was the problem. And, that doesn't mean that he doesn't take responsibility for the fact that it was his invention that did it. It's just what I designed it for initially was what it did, but it's what they put it on, and I have to live with that. So we have that. And Vegapunk is still apologizing. He's like, but this proves my theory is plausible. The disaster that flooded the world was man-made. We cut back to, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be Karakuri Island. And they're just like, Vegapunk, it's not your fault in regard to what happened. We cut then to Wano, as he is talking about ancient weapons. And we see Momonosuke and Kinemon are there. We also see Toko and one of the other samurai, I guess, that is like part of like Momonosuke's guard now, I guess. And Momonosuke is like, then Pluton is, and Kinemon is like, shh, Lord Momonosuke, shut up. And then as Vegapunk is talking, he's like, there were once 3 great ancient weapons. And we see Crocodile, who of course has been spending so much of his life trying to find Pluton. And then we see cut down to Shirahoshi down in Fishman Island. And Vegapunk keeps going, and he's like, it is said that Joy Boy attempted to ensure that they could be passed on to future generations. This begs the question, why? Hasn't the world sunk enough? Such ambiguity makes it hard to brand one side just and the other evil. So I think I have like 2 things for this. First of all, the good and evil, just and evil. So one of these things popped up in my feed the other day that was like in regards to like it was from Sailor Moon. I'm a dork, get over it. And it was like they used to do like these little bumpers at the end of the episodes because American television has to have a moral to the story. And it's like, don't judge someone good or bad because you don't know what they've been through. And I'm like, to a degree, yes, but every single nation that has ever existed, kingdom, nation, empire, whatever, that has ever existed on our planet has blood on its hands in some shape or fashion. Every single one of them. Every single religion has blood on its hands in some shape or fashion. All of it. All of it does. As a species, as a humanity, as a race, has blood on its hands. Just pure and simple. And the same is no different in regards to One Piece, in regards to like so many of these different civilizations and groups and everything else that have existed throughout the One Piece world. The 20 kings have blood on their hands from fighting against the Great Kingdom. The Great Kingdom has blood on their hands for fighting against, what would become the world government. Different things along those lines. Different pirates have blood on their hands. Even the Straw Hats have blood on their hands. All of the Straw Hats have killed at least someone, whether or not it's in canon, whether or not it was by accident, whether or not it was just something where Luffy knocked someone off the ship or something, or one of the other Straw Hats did that. The Straw Hats have killed people. Regardless of whether or not they necessarily consider it blood on their own hands is a little bit left up for debate, but you get the idea. But in that regard, Vegapunk is pointing out the fact that why would they keep passing down these weapons? Like, we know that Poseidon, in the form of like an actual person, in the form of like Shirahoshi now, in the form of like Poseidon, the mermaid princess, 800 years ago, that power gets passed down through the generations. Not every single generation has a mermaid princess that has this power, but like maybe every couple hundred years there's been one. And currently it is embodied in Shirahoshi. And that is something that is very much within the control of, like, one person. But you get the wrong person raising that child that has that power. Like, if Vanderdecken, God forbid, had gotten his hands on Shirahoshi once he knew what she was and turned her into a weapon, made her into something bad, that would be a different story. As opposed to now, where she is very sweet and kind and just wants to help people, that's what's going on there. Then you look at Pluton, which is this battleship that supposedly is hidden beneath Wano and can only be gotten to if they knock down the walls that surround Wano. And that would be a very powerful battleship to have. That is supposed to be this island-destroying battleship. Then you have Uranos, which is connected to the sky, and that seems to be the giant frickin' laser thing that they use to destroy Lucia. That one somehow ended up in the hands of the world government. Poseidon has been semi-hidden from the world, depending on stuff. Pluton has been dormant for the last 800 years, probably. And then Uranos has been in the hands of the world government, and depending on how often it takes for them to, like, recharge the battery on it, then, or maybe they haven't been able to use it that much in the last 800 years, but every now and then they, like, have enough power source within it that they're able to, like, send it off and attack something. I know there's the theory that, like, part of it got used to, like, launch the half of Jaya that had Shandora on it into the sky, and such. So that was, I know, a theory that I've seen before, in regards to like the knock-up stream. So there's different things like that, but it's like the one that seems to be able to at least cause the most damage in a very short amount of time is the one that somehow ended up in the hands of the world government. And of course, as we know from our own history, weapons get moved around a lot. Countries will buy them, countries will steal them, countries will develop their own, all of that stuff. And, you know, same thing happens in One Piece. Vegapunk continues, but the day of answers is coming. Consider this a warning. When that time comes, everyone will fear the notion of a sunken world. And we're cutting around. We see a marine ship, and then we see Sengoku and Suru, so we got to see both Utsuru and Suru in the same chapter, so that's nice. And Sengoku is just stuffing himself with the rice crackers that he likes to eat, and she's just like, you're gonna choke, you idiot. Sengoku is stress eating. We see, I'm assuming these are supposed to be just other citizens that are just like reacting. We see lots of shots of just random citizens that are reacting to what's being said. Vegapunk continues. The Void Century is still an enigma, but there are those who know what happened in its entirety. We cut to Marineford, or the new Marineford within the New World, and we just see Akainu just smoke billowing out of his mouth, and the cigar in his hand is just burning to a crisp. And he's just like, everything? You're going to explain everything, Vegapunk? I'm like, how much of the story do you know? Were you read in on a secret thing in regards to, like, classified documents when you were made Fleet Admiral? How much of this do you know? So we see that. Vegapunk continues, and he's just like, I'm referring to the former members of the Pirate King's crew. And then we see a bunch of the regular reads, whoa! It's like, oh my god, they knew! I mean, like, this has been confirmed for us as, like, an audience for a long time. Or at least for the audience since, like, finding out what was written, to a degree, written in, you know, Odin's journal and everything like that, the logbook and, like, the flashback where it's just, like, him and the Roger Pirates that were all on Laugh Tale, that found Laugh Tale, they know the true history. They know what happened. And, yeah, they told nobody, as he keeps pointing out here. As he'll point out here in a minute. And we cut to the Twin Capes, where we see Crocus and Laboon, and they're just like, wait, pirates know? How? And we cut to where we have the Long Arm tribe, and we see them like, oh my god, and they're like, why would pirates know the world's secrets? Isn't that dangerous? And we see, so his name is Sankrin, I think, and he's like Sankrin the thief, and he's like the one that had like been part of the group that like kidnapped Brook away from like the island full of the people trying to do satanic rituals and summon Satan to fight the Long Arm tribe. And they got Brook instead, and like then Brook got captured by the Long Arm tribe, and then they turned him into like a sideshow routine, and then eventually became like the biggest rock star in the world. So we see him. We haven't seen him in a while. We saw him on a cover page a long time ago where he was like angry at at Brook for the fact that he left and took away his, you know, ability to gain money and everything. So we see him. And then we cut to where we have York. And York is having a panic attack because she's like, hang on, how is that possible, Stella? How could you have known about me stealing a fragment of the Mother Flame? I cut off my memory synchronization. It should have been impossible. Not only that, but I know for a fact you're a terrible liar and a lousy actor. And she's just like, oh my god, think. How could this work? And she's like, you were genuinely surprised, right? And she's cutting back to the moment where we have it that it's back to, well, for us it was quite a while ago in the chapters, but it's when, you know, Vegapunk is faced with her and it's revealed that she's the one that killed Shaka. She's the one that, you know, trapped him here in the sub-basement area and everything like that with the CP agents and all of that stuff. And it's, you know, him, this was your doing type of a thing. And she's like, You got news about Lelucia and took readings? What does that mean? When? The timeline doesn't add up. You must have known the government's plans. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done all this. You wouldn't have hidden the broadcast signal. The broadcast snail. And we cut to a panel that I'm like, explain to me the logic of this panel. So, well, I get some of the logic for it, but we have, we cut to, as York is talking, we cut to where we see Jew Peter and his earthworm, sandworm, whatever you want to call it, shape. And he is just like sucking in this huge amount of air, and he's sucking in a bunch of the CP agents. And I'm like, I don't see any of the seraphim here, any of the 4 seraphim being sucked in. B, why is he doing this? I mean, I can understand if he's just like gonna suck them all up and then I guess like kill them and eat them so they can't reveal any information as to what's been going on here on the island. That would be a possibility. B, just in general of like, why are you doing this? These are your own men. I mean, like, I guess they're in your way and they're inconsequential to you. You view them as insects and you're just like, whatever. What are you going to use? Use them as projectiles? Are you going to try to use bullet seed? And York is just like, elders. And she's calling them on like her communication setup. And she's like, I worked out where the broadcast snail is. And they're like, are you certain? She's like, yes, without a doubt. I am a Vegapunk too. The snail is in the Fabrostratum. The Iron Giant is guarding it. So then we cut to where we see the Iron Giant, as the ancient Iron Giant, as it's wandering around. And it's still being attacked by the Marines, and nothing, as we're sitting, nothing is working. And I know that, like, I've seen the theory that Vegapunk, like when we saw Vegapunk at the beginning of the arc, when he was like half stuck inside of the giant from teleporting down there, that was because he was putting a snail inside, putting the transponder snail, the special one, into there, so that way it would be in a safe spot. And then, Luffy and Chopper and Bonnie and Jinbei showed up, and then everything continued. And that the snail is inside of the robot because that is like the safest place for it to be, where the main broadcast snail is. I personally would have put like several of them in there so they would all be broadcasting at the same time. So it's like, well, we got one, but we got more we got to kill. So we do that. And then, last page of the chapter, we cut to Sabaody, which we have not seen for, we saw it a little while ago with like Duval, but we're getting caught up on 2 characters we saw a little while ago in the anime. And he's like, I'm sure they knew our entire lost history, so why? Why would they just fade away without telling a soul? Why didn't they act? And we cut to Shaki's ripoff bar, and we cut inside and we see her beating up a pirate, which is the first thing we saw her doing. So it's seeing her do it now. Nice callback. Love Shaki. It seems that Shaki and Rayleigh have returned from Amazon Lily, so I'm assuming Amazon Lily is currently not in danger anymore. Or at least not at the moment. After they helped, save Hancock and the island and stuff like that from Blackbeard, the Marines and everything, so that's fine. They seem to have returned. And Shaki is just like, Ray-san, haven't you had enough booze? You rarely get this wasted. And he's just like, I'm old and washed up now. Just like Vegapunk here. A blubbering old geezer who's already said too much. Don't be a blank and take it away from the youngsters. And Rayleigh is just very drunk. And he's just like, the thrill is theirs to seek now. Right, Roger? It's just like Rayleigh's passed out of the bar drunk. So we're supposed to have a break next week. So there'll be a chapter next week unless somehow we get the chapter early. But there'll be a break coming up then in that regard. So there's just the whole concept of like, yeah, we know that like Roger and his crew, somewhat minus Shanks and Buggy, depending on what Roger and such told them, I would have been all honesty with like, okay, I got sick and had to miss this. You're telling me what you found on the Mystery Island now. Telling me now. Type of a thing. But, so there's... So, yeah, there is the question of like, okay, well, Roger's crew knew about this like 25 years ago. And then, like, makes sense for Roger not really to do anything because he knew that he was dying. And he, he left the crew, went and found Rouge. Maybe, hopefully he already knew Rouge. It's like, you're a pretty redhead. Let's have a child. No. He's like, no, they probably knew each other already. They had Ace. He handed himself in, blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff happens. Odin is the one that actually tried to do something. He returned to Wano and was like, we're going to open the borders of Wano for when Joy Boy returns. So we'll be ready for when Joy Boy returns. And then everything happened with Orochi and Kaido and all of that stuff. And then he died and blah, 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 blah. And now Wano, to a degree, has been welcomed Joy Boy in regards to Luffy. But, and then we have Crocus, who's just like at the beginning of the Grand Line, and is just like, well, I live in a whale now. I should probably do that so I don't, die when the world sinks over the next however many years. Smart idea. And it's like, he's there and like he can welcome people when they come into the Grand Line. Some of them try to attack him. Some of them just leave him alone. Some of them don't even know that he's there. Some of them, like the Straw Hats, get attacked by a squid, get swallowed by the whale, and then they meet him. Blah, 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 blah. But it's like, okay, what was Crocus going to do? And then there's like, Rayleigh is, at the other end of the side of paradise at Sabaody, where he's a ship coder. And, as was pointed out a little while ago, he's a ship coder. And, it's like, that's a good business to be in if you have to send ships down further and further. But we do not know where the other, I don't remember exactly how many members were part of Roger's crew and everything when they found out about Laugh Tale and everything like that. But like, I think it was like 30 something or whatever or more that, knew about what happened and, were there when Odin was able to translate the poneglyphs and everything like that and read them the true history and all of that and put all the pieces together. So there's that. But the question is what did any of the other ones do? I know that there's a theory that Big News Morgans is like one of the members of the crew, that he could be one of the members of the crew, and that like he hides his identity and that his name isn't really Morgans by using his devil fruit, so he always looks like an albatross. So that's a possibility. But then it's just like, why would he keep wanting to lie about everything and make things up and everything like that? So there's that question. There's other ones where it's just like, we don't know where Scopper Gabon is or where so many of the other members of the Roger Pirates went. We don't know where they went. They could just be living in obscurity somewhere and nobody has any idea who they are. To go off of Tekken, they all went back home and started various bakeries and side businesses to hide their real identities. So, yeah, Vegapunk is begging the question of, like, all of us want to know, of, like, why didn't they tell anybody? Roger set off the Great Pirate Era where he's just like, my treasure's out there, I buried it in one piece, you can have it if you can find it type of a thing. And then, was executed and, blah, 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 blah. Great Age of Pirates, people wanting to be the Pirate King, all of that stuff. End result is worst generation with Luffy and his group. And all of that. But it's like, we don't know where any of the others are. What would be interesting and a good way of like starting off the next chapter, depending on what Oda intends to do with that, and how much more of a message that, Vegapunk has, it would be interesting if we finally got to see where some of the other Roger Pirates were. Because, like, for any of the ones that are still alive, they're listening to what is being said right now. They're all, like, well, this is what we're being told, so, why didn't you tell anybody? You could have made things so much easier. Now, admittedly, they're like, we got there too early. There wasn't anything we could do. The Mermaid Princess isn't born, so Poseidon's not there. Blah, 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 blah. Something else. Prophecy wasn't ready in regards to what Charlie told them. The world, whatever they were waiting for in Laugh Tale wasn't there yet. Or that possibility, the right time frame, whatever, was not there yet, was not available. They got there too early. And I mean, Rayleigh offered to tell the Straw Hats when they were in Sabaody, when they first met him. He offered to tell them, what the true history was. But he's like, but there's nothing you could do about it right now with the way you are, which is true. And the thing is that for the Roger Pirates, at that time, they were too early. Their captain was sick and dying. And we also don't know what the individual dreams of all the Roger Pirates were. We know that Luffy and his crew, they all have their individual dreams and goals and stuff like that they want to achieve. We don't know if the Roger Pirates had anything along those lines. I mean, Roger wanted to sail the world and have huge adventures and everything like that, the way that Luffy does. And, Rayleigh stuck with his best friend. Crocus got pulled in because they needed a doctor. And then Oden was, on loan from Whitebeard because they need someone that can read the poneglyphs. So there's all of that. But it's just how much of this is this and that and this and that and this and that and this and that in regards to, having, who knew what back then? Who, did they try to tell someone? Did nobody believe them? That type of a thing. The other thing I wanted to point out that is really related in this regard is, okay, probably there's people in my audience that have seen Full House. Or at the very least know who John Stamos is. Full House, ER, so many other movies and shows that he's been in over the years. Great singer, played with the Beach Boys and other bands and stuff like that. Teen heartthrob. And I had the thought a couple of weeks ago, and the thought that I had was I wonder if John Stamos could play anyone in in live action One Piece. I highly doubt they'd ever get John Stamos because I don't think he knows what One Piece is. But I was who could he be a good one to play? And I was not the only person to have had this thought because I Googled it. And then someone on Reddit was John Stamos should play Rayleigh in the live action. And I'm you know what? I could see that. That just made me happy. And I'm just yeah, no, I could see John Stamos playing Rayleigh. I think he can pull it off just fine. I don't think that would ever happen, as I stated, because barring a One Piece even getting that far for the live action all the way out to Sabaody, however many years into the future that would be, however many seasons and arcs that would be into the future. And then it's just well, now we got to start casting for that. And it's just well, who do we want to get to play Rayleigh? And it's just well, what if we try to get John Stamos? And then John Stamos would be I have no idea what this is. It was just although I do think that he has been, because there's a show, I think it's called Scream Queens or something like that. It's a horror parody show that I have not watched because I don't care for horror, where it's him and Jamie Lee Curtis are both in the same series, and they interact with each other a lot, and we know that she is going to be playing Dr. Kureha when they get to Drum Island in Season 2, and then hopefully subsequently whenever they cut back to Drum Island for those interactions and everything like that, so that'd be great to see her. But, she knows what One Piece is, and maybe she could explain it to him, and then maybe he would agree to play Rayleigh, just just whatever the heck you want to describe Rayleigh as. It also just depends on how much money they'd be willing to pay him, and just, whatever he's up to at that point in time, and just be sure, I'll play him. I don't know. And then whoever, I have no idea who they would get to play Shocky. Maybe they could get Nicole Kidman to play Shocky. I don't know. Whoever at that point in time to play Shocky. That would be fun. But that would be that. I think that was everything I wanted to point out for this chapter. I wanted to bring up the John Stamos thing and something, and I'm just like, oh, Rayleigh's in this chapter. Perfect. There's also the whole thing of like, one of the things that I saw when I was looking through the Reddit for this chapter, and it was like someone made the comparison to like Rayleigh is like the comparison of like in The Simpsons where like Abe Simpson is like old man yells at cloud, and in this case it's like drunk old man is yelling at very smart old man. For spoiling everything. It's like, stop spoiling everything, Vegapunk. You're taking the fun away from the youth. So there's that. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.